Chapter 35 The Shipman Cometh. As the clock struck 2, there came a knocking on the door. 2 times at first, a 2-breath pause, then 3 times. It took me a while to recognize it as knocking. That anyone should knock on the door hadn't occurred to me. The rat wouldn't knock. It was his house. The caretaker might knock, but he certainly wouldn't wait for a reply before walking in. Maybe my girlfriend. No. More likely, she'd steal in through the kitchen door and help herself to a cup of coffee. She wasn't the type to knock. I opened the door, and standing there, 2 yards away, was the shipman, showing markedly little interest in either the open door or myself who opened it, carefully inspecting the mailbox as if it were a rare exotic specimen. The shipman was barely taller than the mailbox, 4'10" at most, slouched over and bow-legged besides. There were moreover 6 inches between the door sill where I stood and the ground level where he stood, so it was as if I were looking down at him from a boss window. As if ignoring his decisive shortcomings, he continued his scrutiny of the mailbox. "Can he come in?" the shipman said rapid fire, facing the sideways the whole while. His tone was angry. "Please do," I said. He crouched down and gingerly untied the laces of his mountaineering boots. They were caked with sweet-rolled thick crust of mud. The shipman picked up his boots with both hands and, with practiced technique, whacked them solidly together. A shower of hardened mud fell to the ground. Then, demonstrating consummate knowledge of the lay of the house, he put slippers on and padded over to the sofa and sat down. "Just great," his face was saying. The shipman wore a full sheepskin pulled over his head. The arms and legs were fake and patched on, but his stocky body fit the costume perfectly. The hood was also fake, but the 2 horns that curled from his crown were absolutely real. 2 flat ears, probably wire reinforced, stuck out level from either side of the hood. The leather mask that covered the upper half of his face, his matching gloves and socks were all black. There was a zipper from neck to crotch. On his chest was a pocket, also zippered, from which he extracted his cigarettes and matches. The shipman put a 7 stars to his mouth, lit up, and let out a long sigh. I faced the washed ashtray from the kitchen. "I want a drink," said the shipman. I duly went into the kitchen and got a half bottle of 4 roses and 2 glasses of ice. He poured whiskey over the ice. I did the same. We drank without a toast. As he drank, the shipman mumbled to himself. His pug nose was big for his body, and with each breath he took, his nostrils flared dramatically. The 2 eyes that peered through the mask darted restlessly around the room. When the shipman finished his whiskey, he seemed more at ease. He pulled out his cigarette and with both hands rubbed his eyes under the mask. "Wool gets in my eyes," said the shipman. I didn't know how to respond and said nothing. "You came here yesterday afternoon, eh?" said the shipman, rubbing his eyes some more. "Been watching you the whole time." The shipman stopped to pour a slug of whiskey over the half-melted ice and downed it in one gulp. "And the woman left alone this afternoon. You watched that too, did you?" "Watched her? We drove her away." "Drove her away?" "She stuck our head through the kitchen door, said you better go home." "Why?" That threw the shipman into a pout. "Why?" was obviously not the way to phrase a question to him, but before I could say anything else, his eyes slowly took a different gleam. "She went back to the Dolphin Hotel," said the shipman. "Did she say so?" "Didn't say nothing, but where she is the Dolphin Hotel." "How do you know that?" Again the shipman refused to speak. He put both hands on his knees and glared at the glass on the table. "But she did go back to the Dolphin Hotel?" I said. The Dolphin Hotel's nice hotel. Smells like ship," said the shipman. Silence again. On closer inspection, I could see that the shipman's fleece was filthy, the wool stiff with oil. "Did she say anything by the way of a message when she left?" "Nope," the shipman said, shaking his head. "She didn't say anything and we didn't ask." "When you told her she'd better leave, she up and left without a word?" "Right. We told her she'd better leave because she was wanting to leave." "She came up here because she wanted to." "Wrong!" screamed the shipman. "She wanted to get out, but she herself was confused. That's why we chased her home. You confused her." The shipman stood up and slammed his right hand down flat on the table. His whiskey glass slid 2 inches. The shipman froze in that pose until gradually his eyes lost their zeal and he collapsed back into the sofa out of steam. You confused that woman, the shipman said, this time more calmly. Not a very nice thing at all. You don't know a thing. All you think about is yourself. You're telling me she shouldn't have come here? That's right. She wasn't meant to come here. You don't think about anything but yourself. I sat there speechless, lapping my whiskey. But still, what's this done is done. Anyway, it's over for her. Over? You'll never see that woman again. Because I only thought about myself? That's right. Because you thought only about yourself. Just deserts. The shipman stood up and went to a window, forced up the window frame with one hand, and took a breath of the fresh air, no mean show of strength. Gotta open a window on a nice day like this, said the shipman. Then the shipman did a quick half turn around the room and stopped before the bookcase, peered over the spines of books with folded arms. Sprouting from the rear end of his costume was a tiny tail. In his position, he looked like a ship standing up on its two hind legs. I'm looking for a friend of mine, I ventured. Are you? Said the shipman, back to me in total disinterest. He was living here up to a week ago. Wouldn't know. The shipman stood in front of the fireplace, shuffling the cards from the mantel. I'm also looking for a ship with a star mark on its back, I pressed on. Haven't seen it, said the shipman. But it was obvious that the shipman knew something about the rat and the ship. His lack of concern was too affected, the timing of his response too pat, his tone false. I changed tactics. Pretending I had given up, I yawned, taking up my book from the table and flipping through the pages. A slightly vexed shipman returned to the sofa and quietly eyed me reading the book. Reading's book fun? Asked the shipman. I responded. The shipman bided his time. I kept reading to spite him. Sorry for shouting, said the shipman in a low voice. Sometimes like the ship in me and the human in me are at odds. I get like that. Didn't mean anything by it. Besides, you come on saying things to threaten us. That's okay, I said. Too bad you'll never see that woman again. But it's not your fault. I took the 3 packs of locks out of my backpacks and gave them to the shipman. The shipman was taken aback. Thanks, never had this brand. But don't you need 'em? I quit smoking, I said. Yes, that's wise. The shipman nodded in all seriousness. They're really bad for you. He filed the cigarette packs away carefully in a pocket on his arm. The fleece buckled out in a rectangular lump. I've absolutely got to see my friend. I've come a long, long way here to see him. The shipman nodded. The same goes for the ship. The shipman nodded. But you don't know anything about them, I take it? The shipman took his head forlornly. His fake ears flapped up and down. This time his denial was much weaker than before. It's a nice place here, the shipman changed the subject. Beautiful scenery, good clean air. You're gonna like it here. Yeah, it's a nice place, I said. It's even nicer in the winter. Nothing but snow all around. Everything frozen up. All animals sleeping, no human folk. You stay here all winter? Uh-huh. I didn't ask anything else. The shipman was just like an animal. Approach him and he'd retreat. Move away and he'd come closer. As long as I wasn't going anywhere, there was no hurry. I could take my time. With his left hand, the shipman pulled at the fingers of his black right glove, one after the other. After the number of tugs, the glove slipped off, revealing a flaking blackened hand, small but fleshy, an old burned scar from the base of his thumb to midway around the back to his hand. The shipman stared at the back of his hand, then turned it over to look at the palm. Exactly the way the rat used to do, that gesture, but no way was this shipman the rat. There was a difference in height of 8 inches between them. You gonna stay here? Asked the shipman. No, as soon as I find either my friend or the ship, I'm leaving. That's all I came for. Winter's nice here, repeated the shipman. Sparkling white, everything's all frozen. The shipman snickered to himself, flaring those enormous nostrils. Dingy teeth peered out from his mouth, the 2 front teeth missing. There was something uneven to the rhythm of the shipman's thoughts, which seemed to have the whole room expanding and contracting. Gotta be going, the shipman said suddenly. Thanks for the smokes. I nodded. Hope you find your friend on the ship before too long. I said. Let me know if you hear of anything. The shipman hemmed and hawed, ill at ease. Well, yes, sure thing. I fought back the urge to laugh. The shipman was one lame liar. He put his gloves back on and stood up to go. I'll be back. Can't say how many days from now, but I'll be back. Then his eyes clouded. No imposition, is it? You kidding? I threw in a quick shake of a head. By all means, I'd love to see you again. Well, I'll be back, said the shipman. then slammed the door behind him. He almost caught his tail, but it slipped through safe and sound. Through a space in the shutters, I watched the shipman stand staring at the peeling whitewashed mailbox exactly as he had when he first appeared. Then, wriggling a bit to adjust the costume better to his body, he took off fleet-foot across the pasture towards the woods in the east. His level ears were like a diving board of a swimming pool. In the growing distance, the shipman became a fuzzy white dot, finally merging into the white of the birches. Even after the shipman disappeared from view, I kept staring at the pasture and birchwoods. Had the shipman been an illusion? Yet, here a bottle of whiskey and 7 stars bots were left on the table, and there on the sofa were a few strands of wool. I compared them with the wool from the backseat of the Land Cruiser, identical. As a way to focus my thoughts, I went into the kitchen to fix some Salisbury steak. I minced upon an onion and browned it in the frying pan. Meanwhile, I defrosted a chunk of beef from the freezer, then ground it with a medium blade. The kitchen was what you might call compact, but even so, it had more than your typical run of utensils and seasonings. If they had only paved the road here, you could open a mountain chalet-style restaurant. Wouldn't be bad. Windows wide open, a view of the flocks, blue sky. Families could let their kids play with ship. Lovers could stroll in the birds' woods. A success for sure. The rat could run it. I could cook. The shipman could be good for something too. His costume would be perfect up here in the mountains. Then for a practical down-to-earth touch, the caretaker could join us. You need one practical person. The dog too. Even the ship professor could drop in. While browning the onions with a wooden spatula, I tossed these ideas around in my head. But my beautiful eared girlfriend, was she lost to me forever? The thought depressed me. Though what the shipman said was probably right. I should have come here on my own. I should not have. I shook my head. Then I took up where I had left off with the restaurant. Now, if we could get Jay to come up here, I'm sure things would work out fine. Everything should revolve around him with forgiveness, compassion, and acceptance at the center. While waiting for the onions to cool, I sat down by the window and gazed back out at the pasture.